Hello Internet, my name is Frankie, welcome to the channel and more importantly, welcome to Planet Zoo Console Edition. The wait is finally over and in today's video I thought I would play through one of the first missions in the career mode, and that is the stately home schooling, which will teach me how to do certain things within the game. Thought I'd play through this and I would advise anyone who has got this game to do so, unless you're really familiar because of PC. I would definitely suggest you play through a minimum of the first 3 tutorial levels in a career mode. This will allow you to get a basic understanding of all the controls and how things function in the game, so that you can dive into franchise mode or challenge mode, however you want to do it, and be a bit more confident in what you're doing. Now I'm going to stop talking for a minute so that the people within the game can do the talking for me, and then I'll be back in a second.
Heyo and Hematu. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. I have a habit of slipping back into the Planko language. It's good to finally meet you in person. I'm Bernard, although I insist you call me Bernie. The only person who calls me Bernard is my wife. And even then, only when I've tracked elephant dung into the carpets. As you know, I own several zoos, but I always like to show people the ropes here at my home. This is the first zoo I ever opened, and a source of great pride for me. And prides, thanks to a lion breeding program we ran in the 80s. But we're in the middle of a big renovation, and that's where you come in. Sadly, our old contractor had to retire after developing a fur allergy. Poor devil kept sneezing his dentures into the lion habitat. So, it's up to you to finish everything off. Don't worry though, I'm not completely throwing you into the deep end. My head keeper, Nancy Jones, will be lending a helping hand. Oh, she's a hard worker, and she'll expect you to be too. But I'm sure you'll get along like a house on fire, or even better, one that isn't on fire. Less shouting that way.
Hello there. From that rosy, fresh face of yours, I'm guessing you're Bernie's new hire. Good. Now, I hope you're ready to ditch your diploma because we're about to get really hands-on. But before we begin the real work, how about we familiarize you with the zoo by learning how to fly around it and visiting some of our beautiful animals. We'll start by popping over and having a look-see at the grizzly bears in their habitat. Did you know that grizzly bears, also known as Ursus arctos horribilis, can hibernate for up to 7 months a year? Oh, but then again, given the chance, I think a lot of people would do that too. Select one of the bears and you'll bring up its information panel. See, now this is a fantastic way to get a close look at your animals. Okay, when you're ready, let's pop over to the other side of the zoo and take a look at the lions. I've marked their location for you to find. Panthera leo, or the West African lion to you and me. Lions are the most social of the big cats, and there can be as many as 40 lions in a pride. Although prides of that size are pretty rare. As Bernie would say, those lions are awesome, which is precisely why I handle the training instead these days. Anyway, how about we get started on those objectives? Come on, let's head over to an empty habitat and see what needs doing there.
Whilst we have a little break in dialogue, I thought I'd take this opportunity to say just how gorgeous this game is looking already. And the movement controls are really smooth and easy to navigate. And here, I'm just going into the settings because I wanted to look at that complexity meter. We've all been quite worried about it, what it'll actually allow us to do with the zoo. But this one's only at 36%, which means you can build quite a few times bigger than this. Let's get back to it.
As you can see, it's a lovely space for animals, but it's missing a certain something. Well, 2 somethings. Warthogs. So I'd like you to adopt a pair of them. To adopt animals, we need to open the animal market, which is in the animal trading section.
The way that you navigate between these different tabs is using the bumper buttons on your controller, and I think this is a nice, easy and quick way of doing it. So far, I'm happy with the controls.
There we are. A pair of perfectly splendid warthogs for our zoo. Just select them and choose Adopt. Normally, the animal exchange would be full of animals, but I've emptied out the market while you learn how it works. The last thing I need is you accidentally ordering a dozen elephants. When you adopt an animal, it's automatically placed in the trade centre where they're held until you're ready to move them into their habitat, which, as it happens, you are. So how about you move them into their new home?
This is pretty cool. Just here I accidentally pressed the wrong button, and you get to see a bit of the genealogy, how well this creature's going to do in its life in terms of its health and stuff like that. This would actually be really useful when it comes to franchise mode or building your own zoos later on in the game if you want to do some breeding. So it's pretty good to know that ahead of time.
When you ask for an animal to be moved into a habitat, your caretakers will go to the trade centre, collect your animal and deliver them to your selected habitat. I've marked the trade centre's location, so let's go and watch the caretakers in action. Well, as you can see, those caretakers don't hang about. They'll move those animals to their destination as fast as possible. Of course, normally we'd have to place the animals into quarantine before moving them into a habitat, but I am assured by a person of good standing that these warthogs are in the very rudest of health. Right, let's get the warthog's habitat finished up so we can keep them nice and happy. You see, each animal in the zoo has an overall welfare statistic, basically how happy they are. And that overall welfare statistic is itself comprised of 4 different areas: nutrition, social health, habitat, and enrichment. Luckily, if you select an animal, you'll bring up their animal welfare information panel, which we saw earlier, where you can see how they're doing. That way, you'll know exactly what areas need to be addressed. Don't worry if that's a lot to remember. You can always check the Zoopedia for more information. Let's start by making sure we're taking care of the warthog's nutrition welfare. To do this, we'll need to place a food station and a drinking station. Now, each animal requires a different type of feeding station. And for the warthogs, it's a small feeding trough. So let's add one of those and a water bowl.
For the missions in career mode, I'm going to do everything to the minimum of what is required, and that is so that I'm not overdoing it. I'm learning exactly what I'm meant to learn at that moment rather than getting complicated.
Animals also require stimulation to keep them happy. Let's add a lovely mud bath for the warthogs to roll around in. That bath will count towards their enrichment welfare, specifically their toy enrichment welfare. Oh, nice work. You've got a knack for this, I see. Now, our contractor had to leave in a hurry, so this place is in a feral state. Unfinished thingamajigs and whatsits all over the shop. But the first thing we need to finish is the ostrich habitat. It's over near the hippos.
So far, I'm really enjoying this, and the only thing that's annoyed me slightly is when Nancy, I think that's her name, is talking. If you've already got the mission to place something down, you won't actually have that item available until she's finished talking. Small thing, but you know.
Oh, before we actually start building our ostrich habitat, let's pause time for a moment. Ah, that's more like it. A quick break. Sometimes it's a good idea to pause the game whilst you're doing something which requires your concentration, because it'll stop the zoo spinning out of control while you're looking the other way. Let's keep the game paused while we get this ostrich habitat built. Okay, job number 1 here is to add a habitat gate before we complete the barrier. Every habitat needs a habitat gate. After all, how else would the keepers get in and out? Just make sure it's hooked up to the path so the keepers can reach it.
Some of you may have figured this out already, but I thought I'd point it out anyway. This video is going to be entirely shot in real time, and that is to show you just how long these levels actually take. So you can already see, if you just look at the bottom and see how long this video is, this only took an hour to do this first level.
Right, Let's complete the perimeter barrier so we can adopt us some ostriches. I've marked out an area for you to use, so I'd like you to finish off the perimeter using the brick barrier.
Here I take an opportunity to really learn some of the wall or barrier controls and the different things that you can adjust with it. So for instance here I'm going to be shortening the length and I'm going to make this corner a little bit curved. This is something that will, well, you need to be able to understand it in order to build your own exhibits later on. So I just thought, as we're in such a easy level on career mode, I'd play about with it a bit, really explore these controls while I've got the opportunity to do so, because there's not really much pressure at the moment. And I am happy to report that it's all fairly easy. Doing these barriers wasn't any trouble at all. I really liked how you could change the length and the whether it's curved or straight so easily. Felt it was very useful. I don't really feel like things need to be perfect, but here I do want it to be a little bit nicer. So I redo this corner piece and make this area straight. I figured it's probably best to go from the wall that's already straight, extend that as far as I need, and then adjust the corner accordingly. And that works a lot better than just freehanding it from the other end. I'd also like to point out the reason that I'm using such short walls here is because on the other side of the enclosure where things start to curve, the walls are already built, they are all short like this. So I thought it'd be good just to try and keep up the aesthetic that's already going with this enclosure. Kind of keep it how it looks.
Good work. Remember, before you can place animals in any habitat, it has to have a full loop of connected barrier. Now, you've probably noticed that guests can't actually see into this habitat at the moment. At least not without a stepladder. But seeing as they're banned, I'd like you to select a piece of barrier and swap out the brick for a glass barrier, so the guests can see in.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Nancy's accent is Welsh, and I'm not sure why I feel this way. I think because it's got such soft ends to words and stuff. Her voice is just so calming and reassuring as like a tutor or mentor for this kind of thing. So good choice on voice actors there. It's a lovely way to walk through these missions.
There we go. Adding in more windows gives guests even more opportunities to see the animals in a habitat. It's always best to make sure the guests can get a good view into a habitat from the path they're walking on, because it makes them happy, and because this would be a pretty terrible zoo if they couldn't. The last thing we need to do is to add a donation box. You see, when guests enjoy the view of an animal, they'll make a donation. Just make sure you put them in easy-to-reach places, like near a viewing point. Donation boxes are one of the main sources of income for the zoo, so make sure you remember them. Now, before we adopt our ostriches, you should unpause time. After all, if time's paused, then so are our caretakers, which will make it a bit tricky for them to deliver the ostriches. Oh, by the way, as well as pausing time, you can also speed it up. It'll run everything at 2 times and 5 times faster. It can be useful, especially if you're waiting for money to accumulate or for animals to be delivered to your habitat. Personally, I use it when I'm waiting for a brew to finish. All right, you've finished the habitat, so it's high time we adopted those ostriches, don't you think? Let's get 4 of them in here.
I quite like that Nancy's just casually breaking the fourth wall there. She's fully aware that time can be paused and fast forwarded. She seems to exist outside of the zoo the same as you do. Very strange, but I kind of like it.
While we wait for them to be collected by the caretakers and brought to the habitat, you should get it ready for them. Add a suitable feeding station, water station, and an appropriate food enrichment item. It's often best to place things like enrichments and feeding stations near to the habitat perimeter, so guests can get a really good view of the animals.
When placing this water trough, I noticed that the grass was clipping through it, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to use some of the advanced movement tools, start to see how they operate. Just spinning the items around is fairly easy, using your bumper buttons. To begin with, they snap into, I think it's 15 degree. They turn by 15 degrees. You can turn that down. You can also turn the movement snap down or up, which will mean that the items move a set amount rather than just freely across your map whenever you want. And then the other types of advanced move tools, you've got the ones where you can move them along separate axes, which you can change at the top there. You've got X, Y, Z, X and Y, Y and Z, X and Z. Those different combinations allow you to move your items in different directions. It's fairly easy to understand X, Y and Z. When you get to the combinations, you actually have to think about what you're doing, because I wasn't entirely sure how I was moving things in the way I was. But, you know, it was a learning experience, and that's what this is all about. And after placing this item in the ostrich enclosure, so they have a bit of water to drink, then we achieve our 1 star, which will unlock a statue for us, which is one of the reasons you want to complete all of these levels.
Oh, good to see the ostriches have somewhere they can really stretch their legs. Did you know they can actually run at 43 miles per hour? Oh, heaven forbid they ever escape. The speed camera fines alone would bankrupt us.
Well, Bernie certainly seems impressed. Did he do his speed camera joke? Every time we get an ostrich. So, now we've made the ostriches' lives a bit better, let's do the same for the keepers, shall we? To make it easier for the keepers to feed the ostriches and hippos, we should build a new keeper hut. Keeper huts are where the keepers prepare the food for animals, so they should be placed near to the habitats to make sure the keepers don't waste their time walking when they should be looking after the animals.
As you can see, due to me playing about with the advanced move features, this water trough is now floating. And very annoyingly, in this level at least, I'm not sure if it's the same throughout all of career mode, once you've placed an item and completed a task, you can't then move that item. So, I tried so many times to try and fix it, but I couldn't. Well, the ostriches seem happy enough, so I'm going to go place that keeper hut that is the next task, which is also fairly easy to do. Rotation takes a bit of practice, but we'll all get there. It's a learning curve for all of us. And I think it's a pretty good learning curve at that.
You'll need to rotate the keeper hut to get it to connect up to the path.
As you can see here, there's a bit of back and forth of trying to get this completely straight. I wanted the path to be completely perpendicular to the path that's already there. And to do that, I thought I would just have to tap the bumper buttons, but tapping it just spins it 90 degrees. Instead, you kind of have to tap and hold for like a split second, and that will start to do this free form kind of rotating that you're seeing right now. If you hold it, it does that, but in order to get it to do it a tiny bit, you just have to tap and hold for like half a second. You have to be really careful with it, but yeah, I eventually got it into a place I was happy with.
This keeper hut only has space for 1 keeper, but the larger keeper hut can allow multiple keepers to prepare food at the same time. Oh, but bear in mind that keeper huts and other staff facilities shouldn't be placed near to areas where there are lots of guests. Guests don't like seeing facility buildings, and it can affect their happiness. Negatively. In case that wasn't clear. Something that all facilities, shops, and a whole host of other objects need is power. And that obviously includes your newly built keeper hut. So let's place a transformer next to it, shall we?
I imagine I would have got through this level quite a bit quicker if I didn't keep trying to faff about with this water trough. It was just really annoying me that it was levitating. But once I got over that for the second time, it was time to go and place the power station. And the placement of this is something that you're going to have to keep in mind when it comes to franchise mode. Here they have created a staff-only path, and that is perfect for this kind of thing, because power stations really bother your guests, so you want to keep them away.
Lovely work. Now the keepers can start using the hut to prepare food, and thanks to where you've put it, they won't need to walk very far to deliver it to the ostriches and hippos. Let's get on to your next objective then. Bengal tigers. We want to adopt some, but I'm afraid there's nothing ready for them yet. Head on over to the plot of land I've marked out. It's not too far away. Righty, your next job is to build a habitat from scratch. And concrete and glass, I expect. So go ahead and build it. Just make sure that the habitat includes that big hole we've dug. Oh, and don't forget to add a habitat gate to the barrier. Oh, and make sure the guests will be able to see the tigers.
Now it's time to build our very first enclosure from scratch, and that's for the Bengal tigers, which are really quite gorgeous animals. And here I started to do the brick wall that you see around the park, and I wanted to keep it to the same kind of scheme, I guess. And what I mean by that is I used 7-meter long pieces for most of the wall, but on the corner I went back down to 2 meters and used a curved wall to make the nice curved corners like we just did on the ostrich enclosure. I thought it'd be a good idea to try and keep that kind of theme running throughout the park. Any of the enclosures that we build will match the ones that are already there, just to try and keep it looking consistent, I guess. There's quite a bit of playing about here, trying to get it just right. I was meant to actually place the keeper gate, well, the habitat gate, as the first thing, which I didn't do. I accidentally skipped to the next task, but oh well, doesn't really make a difference. On the menu, the drop down menu for the wall, you can see a window button, and I really wanted to use this, so I spent ages playing about with trying to install windows in this enclosure, because I didn't like the idea of just having some walls be made of glass. I think it looks nicer if it's actual windows, especially for something like this, where a tiger would normally be in the jungle and all that. Having a border to glass would help with that immersive feeling. It would make them feel more hidden. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to have just massive planes of glass instead of actual windows. But alas, for some reason, that function is locked on this part of the tutorial. Quite annoying. That's one of the things that was annoying me the most about the tutorial. Just certain features being locked. Like a lot of the landscaping, you can't do any of the pulling or pushing of land. Can't dig your own holes, make your own hills, basically. Which was quite frustrating. But I had to keep in mind that I was learning exactly what they wanted me to learn at that point in time. And that's kind of important. I want to go at the game's pace because they've designed it in a way to teach you most effectively, I guess. So, you know, I'm not going to push the boundaries too much. I'm just going to do exactly what's needed of me. And you can see there, a little moving shadow. A balloon has been dropped by somebody. I'm fairly sure I get distracted at some point and chase after one of those because I try and find out where it is. Yeah. Anyway, let's finish up this enclosure and add that gate.
Now, Bernie takes safety very seriously at his zoos, so we should probably make sure those tigers can't jump out of their habitat, don't you think? The way we'll do it is by changing the height of the habitat's barrier. Okay then, let's select the habitat barrier and then jump into barrier editing mode. Great! Now highlight the entire perimeter of the habitat. You can do that by selecting fence segments one by one, or select one and hold to use the multi-select mode.
Now, I'm going to save you a bit of time here because this took me ages to figure out what I was doing. In order to try and adjust the height, I kept looking at this barrier menu that we've got here over on the right, trying to figure out which of these controls would actually allow me to adjust the height. And turns out, none of them. and not on the other tabs either. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see different controls, like select all connected barriers. That is something I didn't notice, which would have been more useful than constantly having to highlight all the pieces individually. That was a very slow way of doing it. But right next to that, there is square, hold, edit height. Yep, that's all you need to do. Hold square, or I believe on Xbox it would be X. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's that. Yeah, hold that button, and then just move your left stick up and down, and you will be adjusting the height of the entire enclosure. One thing to keep in mind, though, is your camera needs to be positioned well enough that you can see that little measurement at the top of your fence. Because if it goes out of sight, you don't actually know what the height of your fence is, which is quite frustrating. But yeah, you can now just watch me continue to struggle for another minute or so before we actually figure out what's going on.
Now that the habitat is in place, don't forget to put down a donation box near to your viewing areas. We need every dollar we can get. Especially as these tigers aren't exactly eating instant noodles for lunch.
So, two things I just want to point out. It's kind of funny that Sally said to put our donation box near our viewing gallery, or viewing area, even. Because we didn't build one. We forgot to add the glass. We're too fixated on trying to add windows like this that just don't work, that we forgot to add any viewing capability whatsoever. And also, she said that the tigers don't eat instant noodles. What's that about? Give them some noodles. I think they'd like a chicken noodle.
Okay, that's the habitat boundary complete, the habitat gate in place, and most importantly, the tigers won't be able to jump out of it anymore. I think it's time we adopted those tigers.
Here I'm just getting excited that I can place more of these donation bins, because at the ostrich enclosure, once I place one, I just couldn't place any more. But here, if I place it within the boundary, I still can. So that's, I don't know, there's a bit of inconsistency in terms of what you can and can't do in these tutorials, but oh well. Let's go and adopt our tigers. These beautiful Bengal tigers. We got Adve and Ishani. Gonna send them to the zoo.
Whilst our trusty caretakers collect and deliver the tigers, let's take a look at preparing the habitat for their arrival. We'll start with the basics. Add a suitable feeding station for them.
Placing these items is a fairly easy task, and after accidentally giving the ostriches a levitating water trough, I'm just going to keep this really simple and plop them down wherever.
This time, instead of adding a water bowl, let's try something different. Some animals need a pool in their habitat so they can go for a swim, but they can also use it to drink from. All you have to do is make sure the banks of the pool have a gentle slope so they can easily get a nice, refreshing drink. There's already a pool excavated, but you still need to fill it with water. You should do that by going into terrain and selecting the water tool. Yes, that'll do nicely. Of course, just like the warthogs and ostriches, these tigers will also need some enrichment. Why don't you add some suitable toy and food enrichment items into their habitat? Okay, it's really starting to take shape. Now, the tigers will need a shelter in their habitat so they can hide from the guests, or more likely, the bad weather. Although given that we're in England, you might want to think of that just as normal weather. Go on, add a shelter to their habitat. You can either build one from various suitable bits and bobs, or if you like, just pop down the blueprint that I've already built for you.
sticking to what I've been saying previously about learning at the pace that the game actually wants you to, I placed this shelter just as the blueprint. I didn't bother trying to build our own. For now, I just wanted to get a better grip on these advanced move tools. The more I do this, the easier it's going to be to actually build my own thing later in the game. I think building something from scratch at this point would be disastrous because I am so bad at these movement tools at the moment. So I really need to get to grips with those. You can see there's a lot of adjusting here to try and get it exactly in the right place. I want it to be parallel to the wall and as close to the wall as possible. And whilst I was waiting for the animals to arrive, I realised that they would never arrive because I've accidentally paused the game and just continued to play about without even noticing that it's happened. Just getting a bit annoyed that nothing's arrived yet. Ever considered placing a second one because I thought maybe the mission hadn't actually completed itself. And then I noticed that zookeeper's not moving, and that's what tips me off. So time to unpause and get things moving. And within a flash, the tigers actually arrive. I keep accidentally calling the vets. Every time I go down to edit barrier, I think I'm on edit barrier, accidentally press, well, don't accidentally, I think I'm on edit barrier, press X, but I'm not, I'm on the vet button, accidentally call the vets. Oh, the tigers have arrived, let's go take a look. Let's go take a look, stop building the wall, go take a look at the tigers. Yeah, I was still trying to get some glass in here, but I couldn't figure it out.
I'm sure it can't have escaped your attention that the tigers look a bit miffed. That's because they aren't too keen on the type of terrain in their habitat. Select a tiger and bring up its information panel. Rightio. Head over to the Terrain tab. That way you can view the terrain information and see how they feel about different types of terrain. That'll tell you what the tigers need more of or less of in this habitat. Okay then, open the terrain editing tool, select painting, and give them some more soil. Yes, that should help with the habitat part of their welfare.
Adjusting the ground texture is something that I really enjoyed for this part of the level. Something else I really like is when you're looking at the animal and you see their requirements. If you select any of the textures and press X, it then brings up the terrain editor, which allows you to paint the ground however you want. But above that, it keeps what your animal actually needs. It shows you exactly what they require, which means that you can look at that whilst you're painting the ground or adjusting the terrain, which makes it so much easier to understand what is needed and how much of it, rather than switching between tabs. I'd also like to point out that I'm actually just a big fan of how this terrain editor brush works. I really like the range in size you can get. I haven't actually played about with the intensity, so I'm not entirely sure how effective that is. I imagine what it would mainly affect is the border to the circle, how harsh that is, whether it fades into the surrounding area nicely or not. But either way, I really like this terrain editor tool, and I'm looking forward to adding a bit of authenticity to my enclosures in the future. Because as you can see, this one instantly looks a bit better once you've added some variation in ground texture. Because to begin with, it was just green, it was just grassy. But already it's starting to look a bit more interesting, even if it's just a difference in grass length. The difference in the length actually introduces different vibrancies, and then the dirt obviously makes it look cool too.
Right then, all animals need plants and trees from their own biome or continent. You know, deserts, savannas, or Asia, Europe, that sort of thing. It looks like these tigers need a few more plants in their habitat. To get a perfect fit, use plants from the rainforest and temperate biomes that are native to Asia. Although if you have to, you can get away with using just one or the other. The tigers will also want a certain amount of their habitat to be covered by those plants. To find out which plants to use and how many, select a tiger and go to the Environment tab. Now, as you can see, some of the plants currently in the habitat aren't quite right for the tiger, like the wattle bushes. You can remove them if you want. You You can find all of the plants you need in the nature section, and you can use the filters to only show the types of plants you want to see. In this case, that's plants from the rainforest or temperate biomes.
Just like with the terrain tools, if you go onto your animal's requirements for their enclosure and then select the specific plant icons, as in the continent or the biomes, it takes you to the plant placement list, and it has already put the filters in place that meet the animal's needs. This is something that's very useful. It means you don't have to faff about with filters yourself. It just makes the process a lot quicker. Now, my general ethos, I guess, for placing plants in this stage is to go big trees first and then scale down from there. I think of the little plants more as decoration, but they make the biggest impact because they're going to have the largest ground covering. I like that you can see the tiger clipping into the floor there. That's very good. The trees are more of a statement piece that can be seen from far away. Here I'm using a bit of bamboo. This straight line of bamboo is pretty cool, so I'm going to place it next to the wall. And you can see I'm struggling a little bit with the rotation. Can't get it to go quite flush. And that's because I didn't turn off the angle snap. It's still set at 15 degrees, which obviously is outside the range of that wall. If I had turned the angle snap off, I would have been able to freely rotate it and get it a lot closer. But I'm still practicing at this stage, so, you know, this enclosure is not going to be anything to write home about. And annoyingly, as soon as I get it to the threshold of the plant welfare of 90%, even though I wanted to do more, I wanted to make this look a bit more well covered, I was instantly stopped from planting anything, so I had to move on. But, oh well, it's a learning process, isn't it? That's what these little tutorial levels are for. So I'm just going to continue placing these plants until we get there.
They say that good fences make good neighbors. I guess that's doubly true when one of the neighbors is a Bengal tiger. Still, those tigers look so happy that I doubt they'd leave, even if you did poke a hole in their fence. Oh, but for heaven's sake, don't test that theory.
Right, let's head over to the Indian peafowls. I've been told that we need to improve their social welfare. Now then, just find one of the peafowls and select them to open their information panel. Then we can have a good gander at how they're doing. Although technically, I suppose gandering would just be for geese. Expand their social welfare, and we can get a bit more detail. Now, they've clearly got plenty of space, and they're not stressed, but it looks like their social group isn't quite right. So let's find out more. Head over to the social tab to see what's wrong. Right, as you can see, the peafowls need their population to be larger. To solve this little problem, you'll need to adopt 3 more female peafowls. Off you pop to the animal market then.
After having used the animal market a few times now, I'm starting to get used to it. I feel quite comfortable in buying the animals and then sending them to the zoo. You'll notice throughout this whole video, you can see me getting more comfortable with the controls. And I would just like to say that it will probably be that easier for you as well. It's really quite easy to pick it up.
Good work on those peafowls. I expect they'll be delivered soon. But sadly, it sounds like our snow leopard is a bit grumpy. Let's head over there and see what's wrong with her. Just like people, animals can suffer from stress if things aren't quite right. You know, like when you see someone put in the milk before the tea bag. In the case of these snow leopards, they're a bit stressed by their lack of privacy. You can lower their stress levels by swapping out the normal glass barrier by their cave for one-way glass. It's not a cheap option, but I think they're worth the expense, don't you? This will give the snow leopards somewhere to go when they want to get away from the prying eyes of the guests.
I must say, I did get a little bit distracted here, just watching this guy with the camera. I really quite like the cameras in this game, they're quite nice. So when it came to placing this one-way glass, I kept making a mistake. mistake. Once I went on to edit barrier, that doesn't actually select that specific piece for you. It just allows you to start selecting pieces. What I had to do was select it, but I didn't understand that. Select it once you're in edit barrier mode. So yeah, it took me a little longer than it should have, but once I selected the piece and then put the one-way glass on, it worked just fine.
Of course, when an animal isn't in its natural biome, it's probably going to be too hot or too cold. Unsurprisingly for the snow leopards, it's too hot. Even with the terrible British weather, you should help cool it down by adding some coolers to their habitat. But let's start by opening up the temperature heat map and having a look-see at the temperature in the leopard's habitat. As you can see, we already have one cooler in there. Let's pop some more down and get as much of the habitat as chilly as we can. Luckily for us, this habitat already has power, but you'll need to make sure of that in the future. Just so you know, if any part of a habitat is powered, then the whole habitat will be powered.
Straight away, I think it's pretty easy to see that these heat maps, not always demonstrating heat, but other needs as well across your park, are going to be super useful as we continue to build and make our own parks later on. I didn't actually realise, I was a bit confused here. I was like, why is it not working? Well, I didn't read that it said add 3 coolers, so I need to go back and add 2 more, because for now I've only added 1. But yeah, I'm a big fan of these heat maps, and I think they're going to be really useful when it comes to building your own thing later on in the game.
You can find heat maps for all sorts of helpful things, so do be sure to explore them and make good use of them. It'll take a little while for the temperature to adjust once you've added coolers or heaters, but now we've got the coolers in, we can address the leopard's terrain welfare. You see, what the leopards really want in here is snow and rock, so let's make that happen.
It may seem like a fairly weird thing to be excited about, but I really like the snow in this game. I just love how white it is. Too often in Jurassic World Evolution, I would place down some snow, getting really excited, and then because of the biome I was in, it would just be this horrible mush instead of something nice. But here is lovely and white.
All of that should give you a pretty good understanding of how to make animals happy. So I'd like you to go and check on all the other animals in the zoo and fix up any issues with their habitats. That'll increase the average welfare of the animals across the whole zoo. And that average welfare is a very important statistic. Now, to quickly see how all your animals are doing in the zoo, you should head to the animal section of the zoo management screen. As you can see, this list shows you the animal's overall welfare. So if something's amiss, then you can quickly pop over to them using the locate tool. Right, I'm off for a cuppa while you make sure all the animals are well looked after.
It was lovely to be greeted by this elephant and its huge pile of droppings as the first time that I saw the elephants in the game. They are truly wonderful creatures. I really like the... You wouldn't call them sculpts, would you? The models for these? I don't know, I really like the elephants in this game. I like how they've been done. My basic idea, my basic approach for boosting all the welfare was for each species, I would first tackle the enrichment, and I would use as many enrichment items as was available for them. I tried not to repeat myself, but you know, use a good variety of what they had available. I didn't use that beaver pool. That's obviously there because I have the North American expansion DLC thingy that comes with the season pass. That's why that's available, but I thought that wasn't really appropriate for elephants. But this massive thing is, they'll have fun pushing this about. This task is the part of the first level that I enjoyed the most. I really liked going from enclosure to enclosure, getting to see these different animals and making their enclosures a little bit nicer. I really love how much this game is already showcasing the importance of enrichment in these animals' lives. Obviously in real zoos it is important to have enrichment, because you want them to have the best lives they possibly can. You want them to be exercising their muscles in ways that they would in the wild, which is why you place things like this tyre. Something for them to kick about, something for them to interact with, rather than just a wide open space. And look, he's gone straight for it and booted it up in the air. So he's obviously going to have fun with that tyre. And also with the food enrichment, normally they are a form of puzzle, whether that be food inside of a barrel that they have to work with their trunks to get out, or for a different animal, such as a primate, you might have some termite hills that are made from concrete or whatever, but require the animals to use their brains in different ways they would if it was just a flat landscape that their enclosure offered them. That would be very boring and it wouldn't exercise their brains as much. So I am loving the fact that the enrichment is such a big part of this game, because it's a really big part of the animals' lives in the real world as well. And in my opinion, it is what makes or breaks a zoo. Or, well, it holds a lot of value for me personally. If you're offering these animals the best life you possibly can, and they're not just there for display, but they are there to have a better life than they had at some point, because it doesn't happen anymore so much that animals are just snatched from the wild. That is more a thing of the past. Most of the animals in captivity are a result of that kind of practice, which we now know is wrong. But as they are here, we should give them the best life we possibly can and use them to try and boost the numbers of their struggling populations in the wild. That's the biggest thing for me with this game. It really does showcase the importance of zoos. I know there are a lot of reasons not to like zoos, of course there are, but there are also a lot of reasons to like them. Unfortunately, it is a reality that some species would just straight up be extinct in the wild if it weren't for the fact that we had some in captivity already, because there are species that are constantly poached and attacked in the wild, like elephants in particular, and rhinos. They are killed for their ivory, and it's just... people are cruel, and I know it's a cruel reality that we went and stole these creatures from the wild to begin with for our own entertainment, but we can now use that for good. We can use that kind of thing for good, and I think this game is doing an excellent job of really showcasing that, because you can even release these animals to the wild. So it's just... yeah, I'm really happy with the message in this game. And now that the little rant is over, let's just take a minute to say, look how cute these tortoises are! I love tortoises. They are gorgeous animals. And I love these big ones. They're so cool. Oh, I really want to see some larger tortoises in real life. Because I've seen red-footed ones, which are awesome. They are really, really cool. And Hermans and Horsefield, obviously. But this... yeah, I want to see something at this scale. The way that I'm choosing which animals I'm going to be trying to boost the welfare of is when I go to that animal page that shows you all the animals that you have in your zoo. I just have a quick look through that to see which animals have their welfare meter not in the green. If it's not in the green, I'll go and prioritise that exhibit, try and get that to a better standard. And it seems to be that for most of these animals in the first level, the thing that you need to adjust is a bunch of enrichment items and then maybe a little bit of their terrain, whether that be painting it, well, I keep saying painting, but changing the texture of the ground, whether that be soil, grass or sand, whatever. And then sometimes, like with these tortoises, they need a shelter, because for some reason they don't have anywhere to sleep, which is really mean. And instead of trying to build my own one, I thought I would just place this, as like I said earlier, I'm trying to just learn a few things at a time. As long as we learn something new each time and not loads and get overwhelmed, then I think we're succeeding. I'm going to place some straw in here to make a nice comfy bed, because I know they want a hard shelter, but do you really want to sleep on a plank? Nah, let's put some straw in there. You can get all snuggly. Now it's a bit more of the same from here. We're going to go sort out a different enclosure in a second, but we've got just under 7 minutes until the video's over, so I'm going to just let you watch this because I don't really have that much more to say, I guess, about So you guys enjoy watching me introduce a load of enrichment and plant life and stuff for all the animals in the park, and I'll be back in a few minutes to tell you about what else is going to happen with Planet Zoo on this channel going forward. So we are getting close to the end of the video here and the end of this level. And my initial thoughts on the game. I'm loving it. Genuinely, I'm enjoying every second of it. The tools are gonna, well, the controls gonna take a bit of getting used to, a bit of practice, but that's the same with any game, and especially one this complex. So, yeah, what else are we doing on the channel? Well, there are 3 tutorial levels in career mode. At a minimum, I'm recording those and will be uploading them just like this video to the channel. And I'm also going to be starting my own franchise mode park. And let me know in the comments when you want to see that, because I've already built the first enclosure. So let me know when you want to see it. That enclosure will be going straight to the workshop. So for those of you that have Planet Zoo on console, you'll be able to download it as well and add it to your park if you want, which is a pretty cool feature that I'm happy with. Thank you for watching. I hope you are enjoying Planet Zoo as much as I am already. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more Planet Zoo played on the channel, then make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And until next time, I'll see you later.
Not bad. Not bad at all. I think it's fair to say that you've passed the first part of your training with flying colours. There's still lots more to learn.